"Thank you, industrial society, for saving us from this," sarcastically declares one internet post featuring a picturesque view of the Swiss Alps. Can you believe people used to afford a suburban home, a car, 3 kids, a holiday and college, all on the income of one guy? What happened to society? Asks the nostalgics. Reject modernity, embrace tradition, says the 16-year-old teenager in Missouri, posting a picture of 2 people standing in front of a power line. "Oh, medieval peasants had more free time and holidays than people today," proclaims another, to over 117,000 likes. Hey pal, there are billions of people in the world today who live the lives of medieval peasants, and they clearly don't work fewer hours than we do. This kind of talking point is part of today's digital zeitgeist, from across a spectrum of viewpoints and age groups. And I know it's not all people, most people know we've never had it so good. This video is for the folks who genuinely believe that life was better in the good old days. Happier, more virtuous. We didn't have as many nice things, but everything made sense. The outfits, the buildings, the social cues, people being more friendly than they used to, people being more religious, more public esteem. Ultimately, they might say, we must return to tradition and a domestic, conservative way of living. And I can easily dismiss all of that as bullshit by saying, you can already do that. You can go and live a pastoral farmsteading life and pretend you're a medieval peasant. It's not illegal. There are many people today who live as if it was the 1950s or the 1880s. You don't have to advertise it to the world. What separates you from the Amish is that they're actually devoted. They actually live the life that you purport to want. And when they get asked to explain what made this bygone era so great, it's always about what people didn't have, as if things were better because they were worse. Oh, we didn't always have smartphones, we had to talk to each other. We didn't have central heating, and we were happier for it. No, you fucking weren't. Back in the 50s, less than half of British households had a bathroom, and people hated it. With one newspaper saying it was disconcerting that so many people in a civilized country were stuck with the bleak alternative of a portable bath. Most houses didn't even have an indoor toilet. It was in the shed at the bottom of the garden. Many people look back on this time as a golden age of social conformity and family values, before the sexual, secular, artistic revolution ruined everything that was important to them. Others look back on it as the high point of real proper jobs, in industry, high wages, secure wages, and they were unionized. Wealth disparities was at its smallest ever in history. And sometimes it isn't even political. There are countless Facebook groups full of older generations commemorating many of the banal complexities of the mid-century. Everything from rotary phones to bin men. Oh, god damn it, they made the bin men woke. However, thanks to the wonders of historical archives, we can paint an accurate picture of normal life in the 1950s, untainted by nostalgia and distortion by popular culture. Houses. Nobody wants to live in a pod, but houses in the 1950s were less than half as big as houses of today. Look at this ad for a luxury home. It's pretty average or even quite cramped by today's standards. And while it was certainly cheaper, don't even think about renovating it. Some houses were built with special caverns in the bathroom walls where you would simply dump all your used razors and then forget about them, leaving the next person to deal with all those rusty blades. If you want to knock down that wall, I hope you have your tetanus vaccine. That's even if you could afford the luxury of your own home. The white poverty rate was double back then, and the black poverty rate, well, you can already guess. Cars. Cars at the time were death traps. Car physics were not well understood. They thought if you keep adding bulk to it, the car will just absorb the crash. Instead, it just transferred all the impact force into the frail meat puppets inside. Cities. Littering in the street wasn't seen as socially taboo until the 1970s environmentalist movement. There were no regulations on air pollution, so factories spewed out as much coal and smoke dust that it often blocked out the sun in highly industrial towns like Pittsburgh. Or in London, where over just 4 days in December 1952, smog killed roughly 12,000 people and made 100,000 seriously ill. I will give the nostalgists one victory though. Theft and burglary rates were incredibly low in the 1950s compared to today. Although that's because nobody had anything worth stealing. Work. The average American man worked about 300 more hours per year than today, and he didn't even get paid more for all this toil. Adjusting for inflation, the median salary in 1957 was slightly lower than it is today. He isn't getting home until 7:30 and he's going straight to bed after beating his wife. The idea of a gorgeous, stay-at-home, submissive wife is a load of nonsense too. 1 in 3 married women still had jobs, which is half the rate it is today, true, but it's certainly a large chunk of women. Women who were relegated to being housewives often found it boring and unfulfilling.
I ask myself why I'm so dissatisfied. I've got my health, fine children, a lovely new home, enough money. My husband has a real future as an electronics engineer. He doesn't have any of these feelings. I wake up and there's nothing to look forward to. I've tried everything women are supposed to do. Hobbies, gardening, being very social with my neighbors. I begin to feel I have no personality. I'm somebody who can be called on when you want something. But who am I? I seem to sleep so much. I don't know why I should be so tired. It's not the work. I just don't feel alive.
Nor was everybody pious and morally pure. As early as 1939, a minority of Britons believed in life after death, indicating that maybe people back then weren't as religious as we think. 1950s cinema gives the impression that everyone acted as upstanding, sexless, clean-mouthed citizens all the time, but that was just voluntary regulation by the big studios. For every grand cinema showing the latest Hollywood romance devoid of sex, there were many more seedy dive cinemas showing low-budget, raunchy sexploitation movies. Soho in London was internationally famous for its adult theatres and strip clubs. Alfred Kinsey, a controversial sex researcher, found in 1953 that around half of white women and 68% of college student white men in America had engaged in premarital intercourse. Swearing, also pretty common. Here's some outtakes from old Hollywood films where the actors mess up their lines.
I have my fingerprints taken, my hand asked and married. The things has happened to... Son of a...
What's wrong? I am not lost. Oh, Christ, son of a bitch.
Fuck. I don't know the lines.
She knows the words, though.
You know what I'm going to do for you.
I have a hunch now.
I didn't die, and I haven't stayed away, and I want that child. Well, you're not going to have it,
Is that so?
bitch.
And that's just the high-profile actresses who were in the workplace. You could imagine the kind of foul-mouthed language used by everyday people in casual settings. Having heard all this, the nostalgic may look back even further. If the 1950s weren't as conservative as I thought, well, the true good old days must have been the 1920s, or the 1800s, the Middle Ages. But it's all a race to the bottom, because conservatives have always been talking about the good old days. In the 1930s, one English newspaper reported, "There is no period in history in which young people have given such emphatic utterance to a tendency to project that which is old and wish for that which is new," with another blaming parents themselves having frequently failed in their obvious duty to teach self-control and discipline to their own children. In 1939, a Gallup poll revealed that 62% of Americans thought that life was better in the era of horse and buggy. America in the 1890s had a standard of living comparable to modern-day Malawi, the poorest country in the world. Life expectancy at the turn of the 20th century was around 52 in the US and UK, and a bit lower on the continent. There are only 2 countries in the world today with a life expectancy that low: Nigeria and Chad. But apparently even this was too cushy for people in the 19th century. In 1832, Andrew Jackson proclaimed that under his leadership the United States was reviving that devoted patriotism and spirit of compromise which distinguished the sages of the Revolution and the fathers of our Union. Evidently, things were better 50 years ago, in the 1770s, the 18th century. But even in the 18th century, people complained that young noblemen who, in direct opposition to good character, hurry through life in one invariable round of debauchery, ultimately saying that, despite having attained maturity, young men are naught but emaciated. I mean, look at this guy. He's wearing stockings, a wig, makeup. He rides horses. Gay! Inevitably, Uncle Richard will ruin Christmas dinner in the 2040s by saying, "Life was so much better in the 2010s. We must return to tradition when marriage was between two humans, not these robosexuals indoctrinating our kids." We all know by now that despite its flaws, modern life is superior to anything that came before, in nearly every single way. And in that case, why do we have literally thousands of old people celebrating old butter knives, and even more young people complaining about mechanized agriculture? I think I know why. The two Germanys reunited 34 years ago, but those who lived in East Germany still haven't given up their nostalgia for the old communist system. A majority of East Germans agree with the statement, East Germany had more good sides than bad sides, there were some problems, but life was good there. Yet at the same time, 83% of East Germans approved the transition to a market economy, and the number of East Germans saying they are satisfied with their life increased by 44 percentage points from 1990 to 2019. What gives? Well, when asked what they specifically missed about East Germany, very few respondents actually said the economic system, the communist government, or the Stasi turning everyone into paranoid freaks spying on their neighbours. What they missed the most was the school system, the unique food, the public art, the idea that they were all working towards a common goal, even if that goal wasn't actually getting any closer. They miss how simpler everything was back then. East Germans enjoy the aesthetics of the past, but most of them recognise their lives are better today. I think that's at the core of this mindset, from the hyper-conservatives demanding a return to arranged marriages to your grandma sharing Facebook posts about phone boxes. Modern life can seem a little vegetarian, somewhat bland. Everything from buildings to post boxes have been simplified, removing some of the richness from the tapestry of everyday life. When everything can be bought online and everyone can be contacted at an arm's reach, what reason do you have to go to socialise at the pub, gossip with the greengrocer, or go outside at all? When consuming media online can replace all other hobbies, what reason do you have to develop into an interesting person? Naturally, this makes people very lonely and very bitter. It's easy to look back and think people were happier and more sociable in days gone by. How we can undo this is beyond the scope of this video, so I'll leave you with an extract from the Japanese book Hagakure. The narrative follows a young warrior born into an era of peace, born decades after the last great wars between the samurai. Plagued by boredom, he yearns for a return to conflict, solely to provide purpose in his life. It is said that what is called the spirit of an age is something to which one cannot return. That this spirit gradually dissipates is due to the world coming to an end. For this reason, although one would like to change today's world back to the spirit of 100 years or more ago, it cannot be done. Therefore, it is important to make the best out of every generation.
What does it matter if rain comes your way and raindrops patter all day? The rain descending should not make you blue. The happy ending is waiting for you.